Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Amos, the 8th chapter, as Amos continues to pronounce judgment against the northern kingdom here, forewarning them of the calamities that would come upon them. All right, namely the major calamity that ended up happening when the Assyrians finally besieged Samaria, which was a lot of atrocities were committed at that time to the extent of them being taken out of their land and sent to a foreign land. Nonetheless, this is the book of Amos, chapter 8, verse 1. Thus hath the Lord Yahweh showed unto me, and behold, a basket of summer fruit. And he said, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, a basket of summer fruit. Then said the Lord unto me, the end is come upon my people of Israel, and I will not again pass by them any more. Which is to say, the summer fruit, right? It's ripe at this point. So that means you've gone through the harvest and everything, and now you're at the final stage of gathering those fruits into that basket. And the Lord is saying here, just like these fruits are now ripe for the taking, Israel is now ripe for the judgment, and I'm no longer going to pass by them anymore, which is to say, I'm no longer going to overlook their iniquity. Okay? That judgment is now set. Verse 3, and the songs of the temple shall be howlings in that day, saith the Lord Yahweh. To meaning that the songs of praise they would sing instead is going to be that of screaming and sorrow, as a representation of how bad the judgment is going to be that's going to come upon them. There shall be many dead bodies in every place. They shall cast them forth with silence. Okay, and Amos already made reference to that as in many different times already about the large amount of death. Okay, that's going to be spread across Israel as a result of judgment to come. So here it is. The Lord is actually Amos is warning them of what the Lord is saying. And the Lord is literally telling them that you're about to die because of your hard-headedness, your stiff-necked ways and your unrighteous dealings. How hard is it to just, do the right thing? That you'd rather you, your wives, your children die and go into captivity because you don't want to take heed. In verse 4, hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy. Now, they don't swallow them up by literally grabbing them and eating them whole like a serpent or a snake. Okay, but what that means is it's a figure of speech to say that they take advantage of them. Okay, it says even to make the poor of the land to fail. So here it is, people who are just barely making it. The rulers or the rich or the higher up here amongst Israel, the princes and the chiefs and so on, they enact measures that make them richer at the expense of those that are already, doing their best to get by. And that can be in ways of judgment, right? And perverting judgment. It can be in ways of actual allowing fraud, right? Defrauding your neighbor, as we'll read about that in the next verse. Okay, cheating them. Just whatever ways they could use to get more money off of the people without actually instituting a system that would be beneficial for the people. Okay, but rather it would only benefit the rich or the those that were living good already at this time. And the Lord hates that. Okay. Verse 5 saying, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn? And the Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit. And so Amos is saying, this is what you guys are doing. And you're saying to yourselves within yourselves, whenever the new moon comes, because that's a Sabbath in itself, whenever the new moon comes, you're eager for the new moon to be gone, so you may go and sell your products, right? That we may sell corn and the Sabbath, because you can't buy and sell on the Sabbath. So you the second that comes in, oh, when is it going to be over, so that we can go and set forth wheat, which is to say, like if you go to the marketplace, you would have those that would sell corn, sell wheat, and so on, and they'd have it there in front of them in bags or whatever containers, and you would say, hey, I want this amount, and then they would weigh it out for you, right? But here it says making the ephah small. So the ephah is is like a measurement, right? Like it's like saying 1 cup. And what they would do is, as it says, making the ephah small. So they would say this is 1 cup's worth, but it's really not. It's much less than that. And the shekel great. So you're paying more for less, because they are cheating or defrauding the people, right? It says, and falsifying the balances with deceit. The balances were actual, is a physical thing, right? If you look at a balance, weight, yeah, something like that, two-sided. So you would take whatever it is, whether it's like an ephah of wheat or grain on one side, and then you would put the shekels, because they were actual physical money, you would put it on the other side, and the adjust weight would be one that is not tempered with, because sometimes what they would do, which we're about to read, is they would use unjust weights, right? Which are these are the weights right there, and then they would be able to basically measure it out for you to say like, hey, this is, I don't know, this weight represents this amount, this weight represents this amount, this represents this amount. So they'll put that on here, okay, and then it should balance out with whatever you're trying to buy. But they would use unjust weights to where they would say, okay, this weight is, how do I even make a comparison? Like a weight of this size is equivalent, right? As they would say, okay, this or even this small tiny weight, which is worth maybe 2 shekels. They'll say, okay, they'll I'm trying to find the words for it, but imagine taking this weight with something heavier than its actual weight. So if this is supposed to be 3 pounds, it looks like it's a 3-pound weight, but it really weighs like 4 pounds, or it really weighs like 2 pounds, right? With either way it goes, that's gonna be more beneficial to them. So long story short, it looks like, oh, this is the 3-pound worth, but when they put it on there, it doesn't weigh that amount, and that way they can cheat you out of how much you're supposed to pay. Okay, so there's that, right? If they were to say like, oh, give me 3 pounds worth of wheat, right? They would put the wheat in here, or they would put the quote unquote 3 pound on here, right? This would tilt down, this would tilt up. And they would put the wheat until it balances out, right? Now, if this 3 pounds is actually 2 pounds, but it just looks, they've marked it as a 3-pound weight, they would put that on there, and you would get 2 pounds of wheat, and it would balance out, and it would look as though you just got 3 pounds worth, but you didn't. Okay, so that's just one example that came to mind, right, of them using unjust weights, okay, and as it says, falsifying the balances by deceit to cheat the people so they can make more money off of them. And the scriptures tell us in Proverbs 11, right, let's get that real quick. Proverbs 11:1, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. Okay, now, sometimes we apply this in the sense of like balance in terms of, balancing out the things you do, right? Too much of one versus the other. But in the context of itself, it's really dealing with like an actual balance, like I just showed an image of there. Okay, as in that people who deceive others using that, right? That's an abominable thing to the Lord. But a just weight is his delight, and that weight, right, going into the physical weight that you would use with the balance to measure something. Okay, so there's like the literal aspect of it, and then there's the, of course, metaphorical aspect of this, right? Because this could represent, just a way of life, or just a balance of something that is not in a physical sense, as though you're measuring something, with physical weights. So going back to Amos chapter 8, verse 5, this is what they were doing. Okay. Verse 6, that we may buy the poor for silver and the needy for a pair of shoes. To say that they would set up measures that were so ridiculously overpriced that it would be very easy for somebody to fall into debt, okay, or end up, getting so poor or losing so much money that they would have to sell themselves, right, into servitude in order to gain something or to pay something back, as it says here, that they may buy the poor for silver, okay. So then they would be able to acquire servants, and they would, be able to profit more off of that, which is a very wicked thing to do. And the needy for a pair of shoes. So say somebody who was in need borrowed a pair of shoes, they would do everything in their power to make it so the person can't pay it back, or now they have a reason to say, for those shoes that I lent you, and then this and that and the third, you're gonna need to come work for me to make that up, or whatever means it is. Okay, so they were using very underhanded means to take advantage of their own people. And that really, really, took the Lord off. And he didn't just bring straight judgment upon them right away. He sent prophets, as we're seeing Amos being one of them, to prophesy against them and tell them, I know exactly what you're doing. You and I both know what you're doing, and it's wrong. Stop, or else I'm going to bring judgment. They said no. They said, get out of here with that. We want to keep doing what we're doing. So judgment came upon them. It says here, and sell the refuse of the wheat. So the refuse being the husk, right, or the chaff, the thing that you're supposed to be getting off, right? When you beat the grain on the threshing floor, it's to get the grain itself out, because that's where the value is. They would be mixing, okay? They would be mixing some of that chaff and so on in there, which would degrade the quality of what you think you're buying, all right, and still sell that to you. So they were doing all these things. All right. Verse 7, the Lord Yahweh hath sworn by the excellency of Jacob, surely I will never forget any of their works. So the Lord said he's not going to let this slide. There will be payment for this. Shall not the land tremble for this, and everyone mourn that dwelleth therein? It shall rise up wholly as a flood, and it shall be cast out and drowned as by the flood of Egypt, which is a poetic way of speaking to say that the Lord is going to engulf this land with judgment. Okay, as it says, "I'll swell up wholly like a flood." It's making a comparison to the Nile, right, in Egypt. But just like how the Nile, there are times in the year where the water would overflow and then eventually it would sink back down. The Lord is describing how he's going to, as it says, it shall be cast out and drowned as by the flood of Egypt. So like this was how, the Nile River overflows sometimes. That's how the Lord is going to bring judgment upon this place, okay, to wholly consume this place. And then after that, is what's going to be left is going to be pretty much less than before. And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord Yahweh, that I will cause the sun to go down at noon, and I will darken the earth in the day, in the clear day, right? And this is to represent or show signs, right, in the heavens. And we see that today. Now, the sun going down at noon means like the sun is setting, right? In other words, it's dark, okay? And then the Lord, and the manifestation of this, he could have done it to where the sun actually went down at noon. He could have had an eclipse. He could have had something happen, right, to bring that darkness, but to show a sign. All right, and we know that oftentimes when something major is about to happen, okay, or is happening, the Lord often shows signs, whether it's blood moons, eclipses, different things in the heavens. All right, similar to when Yahushua was on the cross. All right, it says there was darkness, I believe, from the 6th hour onto the 9th hour, right? Yeah, I think those are the hours there. See if we can find that. Darkness. Yep, 6th hour into the 9th hour. Cool. And similarly, the Lord is going to do that today, right? As when you read in Second Ezra, the 5th chapter, it also talks about that, about some of the signs that the Lord is going to show. So verse 10, it says, and I will turn your feasts into mourning and all your songs into lamentation. Now remember, a couple chapters back, we read about how these people were stretching themselves on ivory beds. They were living lavish, comfortably, singing, right, making instruments as though they were like King David did, and having a good old time. Meanwhile, the rest of the people are suffering. So the Lord said, I'm gonna flip all of that. The feasts, the banquets, all that you've been enjoying, the partying, is gonna be mourning. You're gonna be crying. All right, you're gonna be dying. You're gonna be lamenting. And I will bring sackcloth upon all loins, and baldness upon every head. And I will make it as the mourning of an only son. So you're gonna be in such a painful case. It'll feel like you had only one child, one son, and they died. You lost them. That feeling of pain, loss, regret, suffering, that's what it's gonna be like. And the end thereof as a bitter day. Sheesh. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord Yahweh, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of the Lord Yahweh. Now, there were periods of time, right? Points in time, I should say, and where the Lord did do, he did sort of like glimpses of this in Amos 8 and 11, right? Where there would be points in time where the Lord would have it to where you can't go and inquire of the Lord from a prophet or from a man of God. They weren't there. Okay, but this is going to happen on the ultimate level, all right, of fulfillment in this time, where the Lord has a complete famine of hearing His word. Okay, and I'm sure He did it back then as well when that calamity came upon them, and they wanted to go and seek the Lord at that point, and He was like, "No, I ain't got nothing for you." And this time is going to be the same way, but on a higher level. Okay, because this time the Lord has pretty much, the majority of all the prophets out here prophesying, warning people. Okay, and so that famine in the land, right? We go into a famine. It's pretty much a physical famine, a lack of food. That's what it's going to be like. So the prophets, the men of the Lord, the believers are going to be alive. They're going to be here, but the lack of access to them is going to be great. As to where today you cut every street corner and they're there prophesying, in that time, you're going to be looking on every street corner and every street and still not find them. And that's what it goes into in verse 12, right? And they shall wander from sea to sea, and from the north even to the east. And they shall run to and fro to seek the word of the Lord Yahweh, and shall not find it. And similarly, in 2 Ezra, the 5th chapter, it talks about that, right? At that time shall men hope but not obtain. So people are going to be looking for answers. They're going to be looking to the prophets, because the things that are going to be happening on the earth are going to be the things that they were being warned about. And now they're going to want to seek answers, but it's going to be too late. Verse 13, in that day shall the fair virgins and the young men faint for thirst. Yeah, because going back to this time, that judgment was going to come on a great level through a siege, right, which would lead into destruction. And during the siege, you end up having, usually famine coincides with that, because eventually you run out of food, and then you start to starve, and then people start committing cannibalism, and they start going crazy and killing themselves, all right, sometimes when it gets so bad. But as it says, the fair virgins, right, and the young men shall faint for thirst. They that swear by the sin of Samaria, and say, Thy God, O Dan, liveth, and the manner of Beersheba liveth, even they shall fall and never rise up again. So the idolaters, all right, who attribute, the feats of the Lord to these idols, right? That's that sin. That's that manner, right? That's that God, which are those idols. That those that worship them and give them praise, they're going to be taken out without remedy. And let's look into this word manner over here. All right, the rock So it says here, way, road, manner, manner, habit, way, course of life, moral character. All right, so going back in here, as it says here, the manner of Beersheba liveth. And the manner of Beersheba goes into, once again, that was one of those areas where they were worshiping those idols. Okay, so all that still at the end of the day corresponds back to them worshiping those idols. All right. As you can see in the NLT, it says here, and those who swear by the shameful gods of Samaria, who take oaths in the name of the God of Dan, who make vows in the name of the God of Beersheba, they will all fall down, never to rise again. And that brings us to the end of the book of Amos, the 8th chapter. Lord willing, this is edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Recha Kodesh. And until next time, Shalom.